For most of the questions, obviously, I'll speak about what I've done. So I think that one of the three things I would say would be for whatever industry or sector it is that you're focusing on, to keep on top of updates, information, and the happenings within that sector. You have to sort of make yourself a subject matter expert in that sector. So I would read journals, news platforms focused on the sector, journals, attend conferences, just keep abreast. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing would be possibly to identify, either have it physically or identify virtual mentors. So people within the sector of your interest that you admire or you'd like to emulate, people who are leaders in that sector, and just kind of study their moves, understudy them. You don't have to know them personally. You can virtually have a mentor and just study them. And you kind of see what they're doing, figure out how they've done the deals that they've done. That helps. The third thing I would say would be to surround yourself with the right people. So you can't be soar with the eagles if you're running with turkeys. So surround yourself with other possibly high achievers, preferably people in your sector, but even if not, steel sharpens steel. So you guys will sort of goad each other on your journeys and motivate each other, consciously or subconsciously. So I've always known I wanted to go into business. I am third generation in business. So for me, it was, since I was a kid, the only thing I ever wanted to do. I grew up seeing my grandfather and father run businesses, run companies. I grew up within a family business myself. So upon finishing undergrad, I studied law for my first degree. I realized that I didn't want to be a lawyer. I moved to America, set up a real estate company where I was buying and selling foreclosure and pre-foreclosure properties before I went to graduate school and studied operations and finance management. After which I set up the Zebra Group. So I set up Zebra while in America, moved to China for a short period with the aim of putting together a manufacturing company for Nigeria. Came back to Nigeria. It wasn't as easy to raise capital. I joined ECOWAS, worked at ECOWAS for a short period, after which I focused completely on my company. Started off in media, launched a newspaper, the Abuja Times Newspaper, went into media services, and from there moved into agriculture. First of all, agro trading, and had enough traction. I went into processing, built a factory, well, actually leased a factory first. And then from the proceeds of that and raised some more capital and built my own factory and kept growing from there. So that in a nutshell is sort of how I found myself, where I found myself. I do realize that I am a bit lucky in that I have a repository of knowledge from my background and my family. So they've been quite helpful. A lot of people might not be as lucky. So I don't take that for granted. But Nigeria is a difficult place. So every day in this country, every year, every month, you're struggling to stay afloat. 1 + 1 is not always 2 in Nigeria. I don't know that. I mean, even to be a doctor, someone had to have built the hospital. It's still possibly an entrepreneur that built the private hospital you're going to work in. So in my family, we had doctors. My father's elder brother's a doctor. He ran the family-owned hospital. We were in hospitality. We had an engineering company. So I was awake to the fact that all of these professions operate through institutions or companies when they're private sector, institution or companies by entrepreneurs. So I wasn't able to disconnect the two. the question is, where did I want to play? Did I want to be a captain of industry who possibly would be employed within a bigger organization that an entrepreneur has created, which is a great thing? Or do I want to establish one? And I did toy with the idea at first of working within a bigger company, but the vision I had in my head and the sort of company I wanted to work in at the time didn't really exist. You have more of them now. When I was younger, they didn't. So I decided, why not just build it? I was young, I had the time, and if I failed, I could always go back and get a job. Okay, so I feel like, first of all, if you're doing something you really love, you're having fun in the process. If you like to swim and you have to swim to make money or for your career, it's not as, yes, it is difficult because you have to be on top of your game, but it's not as mentally draining as it could be if you were doing something you didn't love. So the first one would be if you're able to do something you love, something that excites you. Secondly, it's important to find a hobby, something you do outside of your work. It could be painting, it could be appreciating or collecting art, if you can afford it. It could be supporting art, it could be, anything. Riding, biking, hiking, something else that you do that helps you take your mind off of it. It could even be watching movies. I love watching movies. So every other evening I'm watching a series or a movie, and that's typically what I do before I go to bed. And if I'm not doing that, I'm reading a book. So you figure out something else that helps you almost declutter your mind and shut down. That helps. So I think that this is probably the first obstacle most would-be entrepreneurs face, yeah? That voice, either from your family, your friends, society, telling you to conform or going the safe route. Usually not from a negative standpoint. Because they can't see it, they want you to do what they understand and what they believe is safer for you. And your ability to overcome this first hurdle is, I guess, it's your initiation into entrepreneurship, because that's all you face every day. I mean, the guy who built a plane was trying to build an object that flew on the air before that existed. Or the guy who built the telephone, or the first guy that built the car, or Rockefeller when he was building the pipelines for oil in America. All of these things, it's a constant challenge. I think that dissuading voice is one of the smallest challenges you'll ever face, but probably the first one. I don't know how I advise somebody to overcome that. That's a gut. If your conviction is so strong in what you're trying to do, I don't know that anybody can really dissuade you. And if they're able to dissuade you, then your conviction is not that strong. If you like jollof rice, someone can't convince you that fried rice is better. You like what you like and you know what you know. And that sort of stubbornness is a prerequisite for entrepreneurship. You must be stubborn. Whether people view it as negative or not, you must be stubborn. You have to, positively so, positively stubborn. I don't know. I think every year we stay afloat on this continent, for me, is an achievement, because there's a constant. Every other month, every other quarter, every other year, there's an obstacle you're trying to overcome. But I think it's the ability to stay afloat, keep the members of your team who depend on you maybe for a salary, keep them catered for, and keep growing. Every day you're able to scale your business. Every year you're able to grow better than the year before, for me, is an achievement. It's not one particular thing, because if I picked one win, a year down the line, 6 months down the line, a year down the line, that win might not have been a win again. So it's every year we're able to scale, do something significant, and contribute positively, at least in my view or our perspective, to the African story and our Renaissance. you don't have to wait for everything to be perfect to begin. Begin in whatever capacity you can. Just get your foot in the game. But it's very important to have dreamt the whole picture. The Art of War by Sun Tzu, an ancient strategy book. One of the laws he mentions is laws of success or victory in battle is, he says every battle is won before it begins. Meaning you have to have thought of every possible scenario, connect most of the dots as much as you can going forward before you proceed. You don't have to have the resources to do this. It's the equivalent of a very detailed feasibility study or business plan, Have that in place. Speak to people in your sector. If you are if you have a service, like say for example, a consulting service, you're offering a service, or you're creating a product to be sold in the market, go and speak to your potential customers before you begin. So if it's a service, speak to the potential people who will be taking up this service and find out what their pain points are. And then you work backwards to address this, right? If you're building a product, go and talk to the potential retailers and off-takers. Figure out what's happening in the market, what sort of products they're looking for, what moves. And then that should inform your plan and your rollout strategy. You do this, figure it out enough, keep in touch with those guys, and possibly, in some cases, and I did this for some of my ventures, you can even get future agreements. So the equivalent of an expression of interest from your potential off-taker or client, yeah? And that expression of interest would be in the event that you're able to address ABC concerns or needs of theirs, that yes, they'd be willing to work with you. That's somewhat bankable. You can use that to have conversations with other people who can work with you to put together the entity you need. You can also use that to talk to people who might be interested in funding you, right? Because you've shown that there's an end user, an end client, an end off-taker. And then you now work backwards to put together the entity that can meet this demand and raise money and all of that stuff. It's much more difficult than I'm making it sound, but if I were to give a snapshot advice, this is what I would say. To a zeitgeist, a series of happenings within the continent. The advent of with technology coming in and technology working as a connector, an enabler for multiple sectors, like my sector, agriculture, interesting things are happening. Because what happened before is things happened in little pockets, and they still are, but then these tech platforms are coming up to connect, have some sort of a seamless connection across parties. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with that in the next couple of years. So far, the progress has been very significant. The continent, we've leapfrogged in a lot of things. Mobile technology, mobile telecommunications, mobile money, and now logistics, and my sector, farmer organization supports and bridging the infrastructure gap in agriculture. So this is inspiring me. This has birthed a bevy of new ideas and created new opportunities, funding opportunities, and new opportunities to positively impact the sectors concerned, the country, and the continent as a whole. So for me, this is very exciting. We are at the beginning of something new, I'm quite excited to be a millennial in this generation. I can't point to one or two experiences specifically. It's a collective of everybody. We're an embodiment of our experiences, our collective experiences. So over time, over the years, from my childhood, what I grew up seeing from my family, observing them conduct business, the manner in which they conducted business, the way they treated and negotiated with people, that affected me. My own experiences on ground, working in diplomacy with ECOWAS, then working in media, which is a bit more erudite sector, and then working in agriculture, where you deal with the grassroots a collective of that is forming and shaping the sort of businessman that I am, and I will progressively evolve to become. So I don't know that there is a particular experience that sticks out to mind that has significantly enough shaped me that I can identify. I don't know that. I always say, think big, start small, and move fast.